We always bring it up. That's not the people who make the big difference. It's when parents start to call that either the principal starts having more fuel to go up to the state and say, well, I have a whole bunch of parents who are saying, no, they want this. And that's what really makes a difference, is just having like a community go, no, we need this.
Welcome back to Hawaii Real, everybody. I'm your host, Io Ke'ehu, and I am with Justin and Kaupu. He's the current... What? You're looking at me weird now. Yeah.
Because I'm like, wow, he said my name correctly. Yes, we're ahead.
Okay, we're ahead of the game, everybody. Okay, Justin, you are the new choir director at Kamehameha Schools. And, you know, I know the listeners are like, oh, there's a choir director at Kamehameha Schools. No, that's a big thing here in Hawaii.
Yeah, well, looking at how many traditions they have at the school that revolve around singing, especially the high school, being the choir director up there, you kind of have to manage a lot of that. And so it is a big thing a big shoes to fill. And especially with this year, with how kind of weird this whole COVID thing has been. It basically shut down all of our big events, and now it's, you have to figure out some other way to figure out and how to get this done.
Yeah, because I guess any other school you could kind of not have choir and be okay for the pandemic times, right? Kamehameha, a little bit different because you have the song contest and the traditions, and every class, every student, or in high school is singing.
Yeah, and so in fact, you bring that up now. This Friday, we're going to be voicing the whole freshman class online because they essentially have to start singing very soon, hopefully, for stuff like our Founders Day, which is the first thing that comes up for the year. For pretty much the whole school, and it's coming up in December, which of course requires a very creative forces going behind the scenes to put it together, and then of course song contest after that, which is where a lot of the singers or a lot of the students end up really getting involved.
So what are the kind of creative things that you guys are doing to get all the kids singing? Because singing on Zoom and online and stuff like that, it doesn't work necessarily, right?
It really doesn't. We tried once in a while in class and it immediately failed, at which point we had to redo the whole lesson right on the fly. But in terms of getting the whole school singing, I think right now it's a matter of what can we and can't do. And right now I think trying to get 1,000 students on TV, that's not going to work. And so instead we're kind of opting for just a representative pool of students to come in and be part of the ceremony while other people are part of it in a different way. And in that way, we can at least have something as opposed to nothing.
So instead of having everybody or nobody, you guys are kind of having some
of a mix,
kids?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we're trying to see if that can work, and if the state keeps on the numbers going lower, because as I heard yesterday, it was 39, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great. But we're trucking in like tourists, right? So.
Oh my God,
who knows?
They don't wear masks. I was watching it on the TV last night going, so you're saying we have 39 people who caught COVID and you're showing all these tourists who are taking off their mask in Waikiki. I want to see what happens in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then you have the mayor like going on the beach handing out masks. It's like, wait, we were citing people for doing that same thing, and now we have the mayor going out, and instead of citing, he's giving masks out. I mean, it's total digress from our topic.
But that leads into what our options are as we get closer to these events, because literally, like, we're planning kind of day by day, going, what does the state require now? What can we and can't we do? And it kind of affected us this past summer when we usually have a summer camp for our choir, and it happens about a week. When we were told, you can be 6 feet away and singing and you'll be fine. We went in that way thinking that, and we planned the whole camp. And then the governor came back and said, now you have to be 10 feet away because you're singing. And we're like, well, this isn't going to work. We have to cancel it. And it kind of happens like that with all of our events, right? So we go in with, here's what we can work with right now. And if something comes up and changes that immensely so that it's not possible, well, then we kind of got to cut it. So we're hoping we get to Founders Day and it's still manageable with the things that the regulations that they have so far. But we'll see.
We'll see. So Prior to working at Kamehameha, you were working at Kapolei High School.
Correct.
And, well, that was all done before the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Well, March
March is when you started?
was when the pandemic happened, and then I finished up teaching in May at Kapolei.
Oh, so did the pandemic like affect your work at Kapolei also? And how did that?
It did in kind of a weird way. And me and my coworkers talked about it going, well, they told us that when fourth quarter started, we couldn't really teach new things. And we couldn't, the third quarter grade for the students was what was left for them. And that would be like their second quarter grade. Well, when the students found that out,
well, I mean, some would have been like, yay, and some would have been like,
there was a lot of them that were like, yay. A lot of them went, well, this is summer vacation then.
That would have been this guy right here. That would have been
so
me.
We ended up having Zoom meetings with us, with a whole bunch of students in the first week when we came back, and they were so excited to see people write again. And then the question came up, are these mandatory? And we had to tell them, no. In that first Zoom meeting, we had about 200 students. By the second Zoom meeting, it was down to 20.
Wow.
Yeah,
20.
They were showing up.
Well, yeah, once they find out it's not required.
I mean, I would look at it going, well, why am I here?
Right.
I have an A or a B. I'm fine. And so our goal was just to kind of keep in contact with them and say, hey, you have a chance to raise your grade if you have a D. But, you know, some of them are really happy with just D, right? And so literally had a bunch of students who were like, no, I'm good.
That's amazing. I didn't know about that. I didn't hear about that kind of stuff. But that's the day and age we're living in, right? I mean,
what we were told as well was, and it's true, some of these families, especially out in Kapolei, like we have a big homeless population, right? So you don't really know what they're going through. Mm-hmm. For some, their families just lost both their jobs. So they're probably dealing with a lot. So be very kind of mindful of that. And so I know for quite a few of them, that was probably the case. For others, they were probably just like, oh, it's summer vacation. I don't care.
So Kamehameha, are you guys back on campus with students, half students, all students? Like, what's going on with that?
For the most part, a lot of them are on hybrid learning or distance learning still. But starting this quarter, we're starting to test bringing some students on campus. So starting last week, we had our not marching band, but our band and I believe dance class had some students that came on campus to rehearse for our Christmas concert coming up. And then next week is when we start ours. So we have 2 rehearsals and then 2 others spread out through November.
Very cool.
So we'll see how that goes.
So what made you want to get into music directing and stuff like that in choir?
Goes back to Kamehameha.
Okay. Because you're a 2001 grad?
2001 grad. And then I was also the sophomore men's director. And for various reasons, well, actually just one really big reason. I messed up at song contest and miscued them. So it was a big mistake on TV. It was really funny. You can see it. And then you see my classmates during the middle of the song, their heads just go down.
We lost.
So, of course, after conducting that semester, I was like, and the first time I'd heard them, actually, when I first got in front of the boys' class or the men of the class, I heard the sound and I was floored. It was kind of like a drug for me.
Oh, just hearing everybody sing right at you?
Yeah, like that whole serotonin thing, yeah. And I was like, oh, I think I need this again.
No, that's good.
Yeah. And so after I went into college and became a math and music major and then realized, I don't need math. I went full force into music.
And for college, you went way east.
Well, for undergrad, stayed at home because I needed that good foundation in music, of course. And then for my master's program, I went up to Ithaca College.
Ithaca, upstate New York, man.
Yeah, so we laugh.
Snow.
We laugh at all of the people up there, all of the new students, because they come during May, in the first week of May, when the campus is so beautiful and the snow has just melted, and you see all these beautiful flowers that they've planted, and because they're not going to grow in like 2 days, and then of course the smell of all the fertilizer, and then the beautiful view of the lake, and we're like, this isn't most of the year. Because as soon as you got there, I got there in August. It was just finishing up summer, beautiful still. And then in the middle of September, it snowed. And it didn't stop snowing until the very end of April.
It's like Game of Thrones up there. That winter's coming.
It's 9 months out of
And
the
then
year.
it stays.
So, of course, when everyone's like doing their new student orientation or doing the campus tours and deciding, oh, we're going to go to college here, I'm like, and they're like, it's so beautiful. I'm like, you guys are being tricked.
But for like Hawaii residents going up there, it's like, hey, some of them first time seeing snow, and they're like, this is awesome. This is wonderful. Look, it's snowing.
So when my grandma went up there for my recital, that's exactly what she did. And she'd go outside with almost nothing on, well, just like a small jacket, and it's like -20. And we're looking at her like, we know it's snowing, but it's really cold. Get back in here. And
You're
she's
going
like,
to
no.
die.
And my mom actually came up a couple weeks before that. My friends had flown her up as a surprise. And supposedly she came off the plane, and it's a small little airport, even smaller than Kauai. It's almost like, in fact, it's almost like Molokai, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like it's 3 times the size of this room. But she gets off the plane, walking in the snow and stuff to the, to I guess the terminal, yeah. And my friends are there, and they look at her, and she's in shorts and layered clothes, like 3 shirts. And they're like, oh my God, no, you didn't come prepared at all. Here, put this sweater on because it's like -21 at night and windy, which means it's like really -55.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are crazy for coming up here like that much. Here, put on this really thick coat, have some shoes, put on some pants, and then we'll take you outside to go driving.
So as a teacher, would you recommend your students go to East Coast schools and stuff?
Yes, as a if they're going into music especially, you'll see like quite a different monster up there. It's the caliber is like really light years ahead of what I've seen over here. And it's good to kind of see where your group, where Hawaii can even head towards, yeah. So we look at the music over here. The Hawaiian music is great, and that's a different type of genre on its own. But when we look at comparing like the choir side to choir up there, oh, they are crazy good. And it was nice to see like the kind of skill levels or skills that you could bring back and give the kids over here and see how much better they can get from it. Because a lot of it, my experience with choir over here is a lot of it used to be by rote. Used to be, and there's this big push. And by rote, what we mean is someone sings it to you and you sing it back. And so the only way that you can ever really learn the music is someone has to sing it to you first. There's another way that you can learn it. It's like language. You look at the music and you can literally just sing it just by looking at it. And that takes a little bit of skill. And there's been luckily a big push in the public schools for that. So you have a lot more schools where the students come out with a little bit of reading ability, and you can give them the music and they'll sing it. But that's like what it is up in the East Coast. Like they go into middle school knowing that already. And then when they get into high school, it just gets even better. So it was nice to kind of see all of like how hard they work and how fast they kind of progress.
Okay, so you were telling me off camera that not only are you an educator for students, but you're also a mentor for future teachers, you know, kids that are at the college level and learning how to be a teacher, and that's their path, and you're mentoring them. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about that was, what kind of inspiration or knowledge do you want to leave them with or impart on them specifically before they leave you?
Luckily, these are students who are in their last semester of their teaching degree, and so as kind of their capstone, they end up almost taking over my whole teaching load. So in the beginning, they come in, they're supposed to observe class, and then slowly and but surely take on more and more of the class. And eventually it gets to a point where it's supposed to be their class. So everything from managing the lessons to grading to classroom management kind of becomes theirs. And I've had the luck of having a lot of students want to come over to Kapolei to kind of work in that program as well, because they get to choose, right? So when they do get there, some of the big things that I hope that they get out of it is definitely to start thinking forward as to like think things through when you start to do stuff. When you make a decision on whether you're going to react to a student and whether they're whether it's worth it to penalize them now or have a talk with them later. Follow that thought process all the way through to the end, because anything that you do will have further consequences later down the road. Kind of case in point, last a couple semesters ago, I had a student teacher come in, and he came in at the beginning of the semester and saw how I worked with the students. Unfortunately, what he had not seen was the lead up into all of that, where by that time I had already trained the students how to work on their own and how to be very kind of independent. So what he saw was a teacher sitting down, almost doing nothing and just watching. But at the same time, what he didn't see was I'm watching to see that they're doing what they need to. And when they don't, I get in there immediately. And before that, I was essentially teaching them like for the whole class period. I was involved immensely until that point. And so when he got up there, you could see he saw that part, the ending part, and he started doing less and less. And I just sat back and laughed, because once you start to step in, right, it oversteps the bounds. I tried to have a talk with him saying, hey, so what do you think this is going to lead? What you're doing right now, what do you see happening? What are you training? How are you training the students? What do you think they're going to be doing in a couple months? And he kind of got to it, but didn't. And so we just let it go. And sometimes you just got to learn the hard way too, yeah. And especially in teaching, that's the second thing. You're going to learn real fast some of the things that you probably should have done in the beginning. So if you don't think it through, here's what happens. And then you learn, hopefully, from all of those experiences, and you're like, oh, I really got to take this to heart and really think, is it really purposeful what I'm doing? Does this lead to more stuff? Will this produce positive benefits? What's another thing? Oh, and this I take from one of my mentors when I first started teaching. They talk about the 3 R's in education. So the 2 R's, rigor and relevance. So rigor is just how hard the curriculum is. Relevant is how relevant is the curriculum to the students? Does it make sense to them? Do they see a point in it? Because then you have some of the students who ask, well, why are we doing this? That's the relevant part. And they say for some students, that's the important part. For some students, it's the challenge. But the third R that they never list is the relationship with the students. Yeah, getting to know your students, knowing here's how they work, here's how you can best respect them, here's how they communicate. And that's actually the most important R that I've ever seen. I worked with ukulele students out at Kapolei High School, and especially there, the relationship is what really kind of got the class going. And it was one of the classes I was always worried about, because if you get the wrong person in there, those students will see right through them and kind of drag them into the ground, because they're the ones who like want to really play around in school, but they're there to learn a little bit, just a little bit. So if you're willing to play around a little bit with them, they'll learn for you as well, and they'll kind of make sure that you have as much of a fun time in class. But on the other hand, if you immediately think everything that they do is like an affront to you, they'll see that and they will actually go and say, well, then I'm just gonna do everything to make your day a horrible day. But luckily I've had the relationship with a lot of students there to make the class work really, really well. I think that's kind of the big two that I hope they get out of it, is make sure you develop that relationship with the students, and then think everything through, from the rules that you set to the class, from the assignments that you set out, how you interact with the students, to even what kind of homework you give.
So how do you judge being a successful educator? Because that's you just dived into your philosophy on like teaching and mentoring and stuff like that. So when you self-reflect, how do you see yourself as being successful based on your students' credibility or your students' successes and stuff?
At some point I remember using, can my students run this, like be self-run, as an indicator of success for me. So when I was looking at ukulele and choir, my program was geared around giving them skills to work on their own, so that I was there less and less. And really that came from a teaching philosophy that I learned from the teachers at Kapolei. And I think it was called Moena Ha. So what you do is you start off and you're teaching a lot. You give your students a chance to do, and then kind of assess and see what they're doing, and then make changes and go through that whole process again on their own. And by that time, by the end, supposedly they're supposed to be as independent as possible. And so that's what my curriculum was geared around. And if by the end of the year, my choir students could, or end of the choir program, the students could put together a song pretty much on their own without me doing almost anything, I saw that as success. And for ukulele, it was, if I could give you a song and you can get all the way through it without me even playing it for you, you can figure out a way to do it, then great. That's good. That's what we want, because ultimately I'm not going to be there when you leave this class. And after having been at Kapolei for 4 years, because I finished my master's in 2015, and went back to Kapolei, I brought back essentially readings, music literacy skills. That was my first chance to kind of check on the choir side, whether I could do it or not. And I think by the time I had left, we had shocked one of our student teachers because we had a rehearsal with our top choir, and he wanted to rehearse with a piece of music. And he was like, how should I do this? I've never worked with them. I was like, here, watch. And we gave them the music, and I said, okay, 5 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll see how far we go. As he was watching them in that 5 minutes, his mouth slowly dropped to the floor. And by the time we started singing, we got through I believe about half the song. And he was like, how? I was like, well, now you see that our beginning choir has these skills. It leads into advanced choir, which leads into this choir. And by the time you reach here, here's really what you should be doing on your own. Like, you should be able to get through half a song, period, without any help from anyone else. And he was kind of floored with that, saying, I see now how that program kind of works.
Right. So it kind of sounds like, maybe you can correct me on this, but the program is not just learning music, but it's learning how to take music that is completely unknown to you and sing it or complete it on your own.
Yeah, correct. And of course, the step for that, or the reason why, is because you want to get past the whole, here's what the notes are, to what does the music mean? How can we best portray what the composer wants, and how, like, what kind of message is the composer really trying to send? Is it a sad song? Is it a happy song? Are you showing that while you're singing it? It's just something you're not going to worry about when you're trying to learn the notes. Yeah.
Here's a tough question. I don't know how to frame this so really, but what does Hawaiian music mean to you?
Oh, that's a big question. I don't ever answer that question.
Okay.
Well, here's why. Because each person comes from a different background in Hawaiian music. And in fact, at Kapolei High School, we had we started up a choir festival in 2011, specifically for Hawaiian music. And whenever I would send out the call, I would always include in the description, it's Hawaiian music however you defined it as you were growing up. I can't really question it. As long as you can link it up with Hawaiian music, and that's your mo'okuauhau, or your genealogy. Like, who am I to question where you came from, and who am I to question that that's a Hawaiian song and your grandparents told you it was a Hawaiian song? Especially when we have music like hapa haole, right? Mm-hmm. And some of it, we've Hawaiians have like said, this is our music now, like we're good with it. But it's obviously not like it's not in Olelo, Hawaii, and it's not even like it's like a wiki wacky thing. Like, we'll take those and say that's hapa haole. But is it really? But in any case, to call that Hawaiian, like, who am I to question that? So that's why I try not to answer that question. I just leave it up to whoever. Well, if that's what you think, great, good. I agree with you. I have a certain understanding of what my Hawaiian music is, but that's because this is how I grew up.
What's your favorite Hawaiian music band?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I listen to everything. Well, actually, no, I don't listen to everything. I listen to whatever my friends put in my car or put on the radio.
Okay. You're being difficult, but okay.
Sorry, it's just like, so if you ask me what my favorite like band is, I don't really have a favorite band.
Yeah.
I just listen to everything as a musician, right? Well, I think.
When you brought up hapa haole or hapa Hawaiian music, I guess it could be either, right? Like, for a band that comes to mind is Hapa. And I loved listening to them growing up. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of Western kind of guitar or country music type of tempos in that music, which is good. I mean, if it sounds good and brings emotion to, I guess, the Hawaiian community, in a positive way, then we'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, I heard that. What is that? So I know. When it comes to like my view of Hawaiian music, one of the things that kind of really stands out is it like, are there words? because then the words become important, right?
Yes.
In fact, while we were at Kapolei, we would be part of this marching band festival, and they'd have a Hawaiian music section. And one of the judges wrote for us, why are you having a dancer when there's no words? Like, we're playing a Hawaiian song. There was a dancer, but there's no words. No one was singing, which kind of made a good point, right? The dancer's just dancing to music. There's no story that it's really emphasizing. And we're like, oh, words really are that important.
Yeah, especially in Hawaiian. It's very different from other cultures in that respect, where the words are very important, very powerful. Yay. What? Okay, so transition here a little bit. What is, or what aspect of maybe teaching in Hawaii that you've seen that you're dissatisfied with, or that you're striving to change or improve upon?
That's interesting you say that, because when I came to, when I started teaching, it was 2008. Do you remember what happened in 2008?
The recession?
Good, recession, yay. Do you remember what the mentality of teachers, or what the mentality towards teachers were?
We don't need you, all the working 5 days a week kind of deal.
Yeah, it was, the morality wasn't really great then.
No.
We're getting back to that now. It's slowly coming back. And I understand, because of all the, we have financial issues in Hawaii. But having taught in that when I first started teaching wasn't great. And in fact, I think it had I can't say that it didn't have an effect on me going back for my graduate work. But that was probably one of the things, the smaller thing. The other bigger thing was that I realized I was teaching the students incorrect things. So I need to go back to college for more information. But the other thing was, well, people don't really want us teaching, so I'm going to go and get a degree. So I got the degree, came back, and then things were going well. We had a good contract and stuff, which showed me, of course, that they wanted to invest in education, right? And then this all went downhill really quickly this year. And in April, people were like, yay, teachers, good. You're keeping our students busy. And then we get back to the beginning of the school year, and they're like, teachers, get back to work. And we're like, we want to, but. And then it became problematic, because then you get that mentality of, well, you get to, if you read the comment section, don't ever read the comment section.
Never.
Yeah. Then you start to see a really negative vibe come out, and you're like, oh no. But what I wish kind of was more consistent around or in Hawaii was their want, or maybe not a want, but ability to support education more, because that's like if you invest now, it doesn't show fruit now. It shows fruit like 10 years down the line, and that's the problem. Is it takes so long for the positives to show up, but it's some big positives.
But the negatives show up real quick.
Oh yeah, really fast. Like when you have students not graduating and just leaving school, that kind of stuff. But I have students coming back and mentioning to our program, saying, hey, thank you for helping me at least learn this part. Like, I was ahead of my class when we started college. So it's nice to see some of those students benefit from at least small parts of our program. Even if it's not choir, I've heard students even come back from bands saying stuff like that.
Yeah, because Hawaii has, and mostly public schools, has had a long tradition of being like poorly funded and not like the greatest public school system.
Yeah, and when I look at it, I mean, I understand you have 13,000 people who you have to pay for. That's a big bill. And that's probably the easiest part to cut. When you look at it, you're like, okay, we can make this big cut and we don't have to worry. But then imagine like all those teachers that you're going to lose who are like, well, I'm not going to take the cut, and you just lost all that experience. And those are the really good ones too. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to cut education.
But I understand we don't have a whole lot of money in the state. Maybe.
Yeah, there's other things you can cut though.
There is,
but there are.
But I think the public doesn't have that kind of a big push yet, enough to be able to say, no, we want education, cut something else. Yeah. But that's what I kind of feel. Like if you really wanted it, you would go fight for it, right?
It's hard because, especially with education, the people fighting for education are typically the parents.
Yep.
And that's kind of a small portion, because if you're in a certain time frame where your kid is, or children are of the age that they're at school and being affected by cuts and, budgets and stuff like that. But after they graduate, not your problem anymore. Or before they even get to school, not your problem yet.
So what I try to tell parents when they come up and say, hey, you guys should do this, I'm like, or when they have problems and stuff, I'm like, we teachers can talk about it all we want. We have issues with it always. We always bring it up. But that's not the people who make the big difference. It's when parents start to call that either the principal starts having more fuel to go up to the state and say, well, I have a whole bunch of parents who are saying, no, they want this. And that's what really makes a difference, is just having like the community go, no, we need this. I think it's akin to like the difference between, are they going to build a new football field or are they going to build a new performing arts center? The community wants a football field. They're going to get the football field. You need a lot of people pushing for it, like within the community going, no, we want this. Get it done. And even if you're like, if you don't have a kid in there, like it will affect you because these are the people who are going to be running your city soon. You want them to be stupid?
No. Justin, it's been great having you on, man. And you're like, what? That's time already?
Oh, smoking portuguesa.
It happens with a lot of guests. Like, they look at the clock when we're closing out. I was like, what? That's it?
But thank you for having me on. This was great.
Right on, man. Thank you for coming on. All right, everybody. Stay happy, Hawaii.